I retired and bought a cabin in the middle of the woods. Finally, peace with nature. No noise, no people, just the wind and the treetops. Then my son-in-law called me and said, "My parents are moving in with you. If you don't like it, move back to the city." I didn't say anything, but I prepared a surprise that would turn their lives upside down. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are right now. The keys felt heavier than they should. I was at Rebecca Mars's real estate office in Cody, holding them while she stapled papers I didn't even remember. Outside, the March wind blew tumbleweeds across the parking lot. "Congratulations, mister." "Nelson," Rebecca told me, with a smile like she had just handed me the world. Maybe she had. "You are officially a property owner in Park County." That same morning, the cashier's check for $185,000 had cleared my account. 40 years of extra shifts, sacrificed vacations, lunches packed in a lunchbox. 4 decades compressed into 6 figures, now turned into 800 square feet of wood and solitude, 12 miles from civilization. "Thank you." I pocketed the keys and shook her hand. My fingers were steadier than I thought they'd be. From her office, I drove west on Highway 14, then north, onto roads that got narrower and narrower. Pavement turned to gravel. Gravel turned to dirt. My cell signal dropped from 4 bars to 2, then to 1. I stopped at a small general store and bought coffee, bread, eggs, and butter. The clerk asked if I was just passing through. "Living here," I replied. She acted like I'd said something profound. The last 2 miles climbed through pines so dense the afternoon sun barely got through. When the cabin appeared in a clearing, I cut the engine and just stared. There were 4 elk grazing about 50 yards from the porch. They lifted their heads, watched my truck, and went back to eating. One barely flicked an ear to swat a fly. I sat there for 5 minutes, just watching them. No horns, no sirens, no voices bleeding through apartment walls. The cabin was exactly as the photos promised. Weathered cedar logs, a green metal roof, a stone chimney. Small, yes. But Mina. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled like pine resin and old wood smoke, a single room with a kitchenette. A bedroom just big enough for a queen bed, and a bathroom with a shower so narrow I'd have to step in sideways. Perfect. I unloaded the truck slowly, organizing everything with method. Tools on the pegboard above the workbench. Hammer, wrenches, saw, each in its place. Books arranged by subject on the shelf. History, engineering manuals, 3 novels I'd been meaning to read for over 10 years. And a coffee maker, placed right in the corner where the morning light would hit it first. Every object was placed with care, trying to bring order to the chaos of moving boxes. By the time I finished, the sun was starting to set. I made coffee. Too late in the day for it, but I didn't care, and took it to the porch. The rocking chair I'd bought for this exact moment creaked under my weight. The elk had moved deeper into the clearing. A hawk circled overhead, riding the currents. I called Sarah. "Dad." Her voice sounded clear and close. "Are you there? Did you do it?" "I signed the papers this morning," I answered. "I'm sitting on the porch right now, watching the elk. I'm so proud of you." The warmth in her words tightened my chest. "You earned it. 40 years." I took a sip of coffee. 40 years. I dreamed of mornings where I'd drink coffee watching nature instead of highway traffic. "You deserve every second of peace." She paused. "Cornelius has been so stressed with work lately. I sometimes forget what quiet looks like." Something in her tone made me stop. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, of course. You know how it is. Middle management pressure." She laughed, but it sounded weak. "When can I come see you?" "Anytime, honey. You know that." We chatted for about 10 more minutes. She told me about her students, her plans for the garden, safe things. When we hung up, I watched the sun paint the mountains orange and violet. The coffee was cold, but I drank it anyway. An hour later, the phone rang. My parents lost their house. Cornelius didn't bother to say hello. His voice was flat, like on his office calls. "They're moving in with you for a couple of months until they find a place." I gripped the arm of the chair. "Wait, what?" Cornelius, I just bought this house. Barely. Just a couple of months until they find something. I bought this place to be alone. I spent my entire retirement on it. Then you should have stayed in Denver. Friday morning. I'll text you the time they arrive. The line went dead. I sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at the clearing where the elk had been. They were gone now. Smart animals. My knuckles had turned white on the armrest. I forced myself to let go. I flexed my fingers. I breathed. I poured another coffee I didn't really want, and sat at the kitchen table. I pulled a small notebook and a pen from my jacket pocket. It was one of those engineering pads with graph paper I'd used for 40 years for sketches and calculations. I started writing, not venting, questions, timelines, resource assessments. The cabin keys rested next to the notebook. An hour ago they meant freedom. Now they represented something else. I picked them up, felt their weight, and set them back down carefully. For 40 years, I had been the reasonable one, the mediator, the one who swallowed discomfort to keep the family peace. Not anymore. The sunrise came through the kitchen windows and found me still there. Empty cups formed a semicircle around my notebook, which was filled with lists, diagrams, and questions. Written and rewritten. I hadn't slept. I didn't need it. My mind was clearer than it had been in years. Focused, sharp, fueled by something purer than rest. I made fresh coffee and reviewed my notes. Then I gathered everything, loaded my truck, and drove back to Cody. The Yellowstone Ranger Station was 20 minutes west, a modern building designed to blend into the landscape. Inside, educational displays showed wolf packs, bear territories, and elk migration routes. A ranger, maybe in his 40s, with a face weathered from being outdoors, looked up from his desk. "Can I help you with something?" "I just moved here from Denver," I said. "Bought a piece of land up near County Road 14. "Beautiful area," he smiled. "You'll need to be careful with food storage. A lot of bear activity in the spring." "What about wolves?" "I heard they're back in the region. The reintroduction has been successful." He got up and pointed to a map on the wall with colored pins. "They're usually shy, but their sense of smell is incredible. They can detect prey or food from miles away. Are you planning to hunt?" "No, I just want to be prepared." "Very sensible." He handed me a brochure. "Keep your property clean. Don't leave anything out to attract them. Unless you want visitors." I took detailed notes in my field book. Wind direction, pack territories, seasonal behavior patterns. I thanked him sincerely. I mentioned again I was from Denver, still learning the mountain way of life. Every word was calculated to sound naive, concerned, just what he'd expect from a nervous newcomer. Back in Cody, I went into an outdoor supply store, the kind with taxidermy on the walls and racks of camouflage clothing. The camera section was between hunting gear and security systems. "I'm looking for wildlife cameras. I want to monitor bear activity near my land," I told the clerk. He showed me 2 models. Motion-activated, night vision, cellular connection. "These will do the trick. Lots of folks like to keep an eye on their land," he assured me. "They cost $340. I paid cash." That same Wednesday afternoon back at the cabin, I installed them carefully. One pointed at the driveway entrance, the other focused on the main porch. I tested the sensors, checked the signal, adjusted the positions until the coverage was perfect. The engineering part of my brain, after 40 years of solving structural problems, enjoyed the precision. Test, adjust, verify. I concealed the cameras just enough to be unnoticed, but still capture everything necessary. Both connected to my phone with just 1 bar of service. Weak, but sufficient. Thursday morning I drove back to Cody. The butcher shop was on a side street. It served local ranchers and restaurants. "I need 20 pounds of beef scraps," I ordered. "Organs, fat, trimmings. For dogs." The butcher didn't blink. "All right." It was $45 for the meat, wrapped in white paper and packed into the coolers I'd brought. The smell was immediate and strong. Blood, fat, raw meat. That afternoon, in the clearing behind the cabin, I opened the coolers. The wind was coming from the west. I checked the old-fashioned way, wetting my finger and holding it up. I walked about 30 yards uphill from the cabin. I placed the meat in 3 piles, spreading it out so the scent would carry better. Nothing random, everything calculated. Not close enough to draw predators to the house, but far enough that they'd focus on the meat, not the cabin. I wasn't trying to put anyone in danger. I was trying to teach a lesson. Back inside, I checked every room, secured the windows, unplugged what wasn't necessary. I left the thermostat at the minimum setting, protecting my investment while the plan was set. I paused at the door. I looked one last time at the place I'd barely spent 3 days, and left without hesitation. The drive back to Denver took 5 hours. I arrived at my old house just before midnight. The suburban home I hadn't sold yet. Half furnished but empty. I unloaded the truck, set up my laptop in the living room, and placed my phone where I could see the camera feeds. Then, I waited. Friday at 10 a.m., a sedan appeared on my phone screen. Leonard and Grace got out. They looked around with expressions I recognized even on the small image. Disgust, judgment. The camera's microphone picked up their voices. "This is where he lives now?" Grace asked, wrinkling her nose. "It smells like pine and dirt." "At least it's free," Leonard said, walking toward the cabin. "We'll stay a few months. Let Cornelius figure out what's next. I don't see why we had to come all the way out here." Grace stopped short. "Leonard." "Wolves." 3 figures emerged from the tree line to the northwest, gray and brown, moving cautiously toward the meat piles. They weren't aggressive. They didn't seem interested in the humans. They were just hungry. Leonard saw them and went pale. "Get in the car! Now!" They ran. Grace stumbled, recovered, and the car door slammed shut. The engine roared. Gravel flew as they reversed frantically before speeding back down the path. The wolves, undisturbed, continued toward the meat. I closed the laptop and picked up my coffee. I took a slow sip. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "What did you do?" Cornelius's voice had lost its professional tone. It was pure fury. My parents were almost attacked. "I didn't do anything," I replied calmly. "I warned you this property is in the middle of the woods. You planned this. You trapped those animals." "Cornelius, I live in wolf country. They live here. This is their home. Maybe you should have asked before you assumed you could use mine." "You're insane." "I'm going to." "You're going to what? Sue me because there's wildlife on my property?" "Good luck with that. This isn't over." "No," I said. "It's just beginning." I hung up. I set the phone down carefully. I went back to the laptop and watched again as the wolves finished the meat before disappearing back into the forest trees. From my window in Denver, the mountains rose in the distance. Up there, the cabin was waiting for me, where I had been thinking about how to defend myself. But as I sat there, watching the footage one more time, I understood something had changed. This wasn't about defense anymore. 2 weeks passed before Cornelius made his next move. During those days, I tried to live the routine I'd dreamed of. Coffee on the porch at dawn, watching the elk cross the clearing, reading the books I'd put off for decades. But the quiet felt fragile, like standing on thin ice that could crack at any moment. I checked my phone more than I wanted to. I kept the camera feeds open on the laptop. I listened for any vehicle coming up the dirt road. In mid-April, the first wildflowers bloomed, and the afternoons grew warmer. I was splitting firewood when my cell rang. It was Sarah. "Dad, please." Her voice broke on the second word. She was crying. Cornelius showed me the video of the wolves. That could have ended so much worse. I set the axe down and walked to the porch. "Sarah, honey, there are wolves in these mountains." I didn't cause that situation. I warned Cornelius this place wasn't suitable for his parents. But you knew they were coming. You could have done something to make it safer. The script was obvious. Every line sounded rehearsed, dictated. My daughter had become his messenger. "I bought this property for solitude," I said, keeping my voice firm. "No one asked me if I wanted visitors. But I'm willing to meet with Leonard and Grace to discuss options." "Really?" Her tone filled with hope. "Yes, but it will be in town, neutral ground. We'll talk." When I hung up, I watched the clouds move over the mountains. She genuinely thought she was helping. That made it worse. 2 days later, I drove to Cody for the meeting. I'd spent the previous nights preparing, researching rental prices in rural Wyoming, printing 3 copies of a temporary lease agreement, reviewing property law basics. That morning I practiced my presentation in the truck's mirror, finding the right way to phrase it. Firm, but not aggressive. Clear, but not cold. The Grizzly Peak Cafe was on Main Street, small and local. Wooden tables, landscape photos on the walls, and big windows facing the morning traffic. I got there 15 minutes early. I chose my spot carefully. A table by the window, my back to the wall with a clear view of the entrance. All within range of the security camera, I noted above the register. I ordered a black coffee and waited. Leonard and Grace arrived right on time. Cornelius had clearly dropped them off nearby, coaching them on what to say. They walked in, didn't order anything, and sat across from me like I'd summoned them to court. "Hello, Leonard. Grace, can I get you some coffee?" Leonard didn't answer. "Ray, this has gone on long enough. We need those keys. Today." "We didn't come for coffee," Grace added. "We came because family is supposed to help family." I took the rental agreement from my folder and slid it across the table. The paper whispered against the wood. I straightened it with the edge of the table and tapped it once with my index finger. "I agree, that's why I prepared a proposal." Leonard looked down at it, then back at me, his face flushing red. "A rental agreement? You're going to charge us rent? Market rate for a furnished property in this area. $1,200 a month. 6-month lease. Standard terms. You want money from your own family?" His voice rose. A few customers turned. "From people who have nowhere else to go." Grace leaned forward, faking being hurt. "I never thought you were this kind of person, Ray. Greedy. Just greedy." I stood up, collected my folder, and took my coffee cup to the counter. Habit, politeness, the kind of gesture that separated me from people who expected to be waited on. "Then I guess we don't have an agreement. You'll have to find somewhere else to live. You can't just... Where are we supposed to?" Leonard half rose from his chair. "That's not my problem. Good afternoon." I nodded to the barista on my way out. In the truck, I sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel, breathing slowly, letting the adrenaline fade. Then I started the engine and drove home. That night, my phone became a weapon aimed at me from multiple fronts. The first call came around 6. It was my cousin Linda. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. "Ray, it's Linda. I heard you've been having some trouble." "Trouble? Who did you hear that from?" Cornelius called me. "He's worried about you. Says you're isolated in the mountains and acting strange." The strategy revealed itself completely. He was building a narrative, planting seeds of doubt with every family member he could reach. "Linda, I'm fine. I retired to Wyoming." "There's nothing strange about that. It's been the plan for years." He said there was an incident with wild animals, and that you refused to help his parents. An interesting version of events. "Thank you for checking on me, Linda. I'm fine." I ended the call and stared at the phone. 20 minutes later, an old colleague from Denver called. Same script, different voice. Cornelius had contacted him, expressing concern for Ray's mental state. The third call came at 8:30. It was Sarah again. "You embarrassed them." She wasn't crying anymore. She was furious. "In public. What were you thinking?" I offered them a fair solution. They rejected it. "A rental agreement?" "Dad. His family. Cornelius's parents. And this is my house. My retirement. My only place of peace. I bought it with money I saved for 40 years. Cornelius was right. You've changed. You've become someone I don't recognize." Her words landed with the weight she intended. I kept my voice low, controlled, even though something cracked in my chest. Maybe I have. Or maybe everyone else changed, and I'm just starting to notice. The line went dead. She had hung up on me. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone in my hand, watching the darkness cover the mountains. 3 calls in one evening, all saying the same thing. Ray Nelson is unstable, dangerous, irrational. The isolation I had sought was now being used against me, twisted into proof of my supposed mental decline. Cornelius wasn't trying to get the cabin anymore. He was trying to destroy my credibility first, make me look incompetent, turn the family against me so no one would believe my side of the story. A classic strategy. Isolate the target, control the narrative, attack when they're defenseless. I opened my laptop and started typing. Mr. David Thornton, attorney at law. I sent the email at 9:47 p.m. Careful words, factual language. No emotion leaking through. I needed legal advice regarding family pressure related to my property, potential claims, asset protection. I included the basics, my age, the property value, the family situation, and I finished with 3 specific questions about inheritance law and estate planning. Afterward, I poured a bourbon, just 1 glass, 2 fingers, no ice. I'm not much of a drinker, but that night called for it. The porch was cold for April, but I sat out there anyway, watching the stars appear over the mountains. Somewhere down there, Cornelius was already planning his next move. I planned to be several steps ahead. At dawn, an email was waiting. David Thornton had replied at 7:15 a.m. He could meet Thursday afternoon at his office in Cody. Fees, $300 an hour. I confirmed the appointment immediately. I spent the next 3 days organizing documents. My engineering background served me well. Everything labeled, dated, cross-referenced. The property deed in one folder, the purchase papers in another, a family tree showing the relationships, a written timeline of events, starting with Cornelius's first call, transcripts of key conversations based on my notes, printouts of the rental contract Leonard had refused. By Thursday morning, I had a leather portfolio of evidence as solid as any structure I'd ever designed. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Sarah. Dad. Her voice was weak, exhausted. I'm sorry I yelled at you after the cafe. It's just, I'm so tired. I understand, honey. This has been hard on everyone. Cornelius is just so stressed. He's been trying to help his parents ever since Leonard lost all that money. I froze. Lost money? What happened? Oh, you didn't know? Leonard was playing online poker. He lost $47,000 in 6 months. That's why they lost the house. They mortgaged it to pay his gambling debts. $47,000. The number just hung in the air like smoke. That's a lot of money. No wonder Cornelius is so stressed. Yeah, and he keeps talking about solutions, about how if we could just, I don't know, reorganize the family assets. She was talking faster now, anxiety overriding her caution. He mentioned something about putting your cabin into a family trust, so it would eventually benefit everyone. For estate planning, you know. And apparently the property value has already gone up since you bought it in March. Every word clicked into place. A family trust. That's an interesting idea. When did Cornelius propose that? A few weeks ago. He said it would be smart, for tax purposes. Well, in the future. I don't really understand estate planning. Neither do I. That's why I'm meeting with a lawyer this week, to make sure everything is squared away. A lawyer? Her voice hardened. Dad, is that necessary? At my age, with a property worth this much? Yes, it's the responsible thing to do. After I hung up, I added 6 pages of notes to my file. Leonard's gambling debt. Cornelius's plan disguised as estate strategy. The timeline of desperation that was fueling the aggression. Thursday afternoon, I drove to Cody and parked across from Murphy's Hardware on Sheridan Avenue. Thornton's office was on the 2nd floor. Professional signs, steady foot traffic, a well-kept building. I watched it for 5 minutes, assessing. Then I grabbed my portfolio and went inside. David Thornton looked to be in his early 50s, with the rugged edge of Wyoming and the directness of someone who grew up on a ranch before law school changed his path. His office had wood furniture, law books, a framed degree from the University of Wyoming, and a window overlooking Main Street. I handed him my documents in order. Deeds, family tree, timeline, proof. Each paper moved from my hand to his at the right moment. Thornton took notes, asked precise questions. I had ready answers. Mr. Nelson, I must say, this is the most organized file I've seen in years. You have everything documented. 40 years in structural engineering. Documentation prevents lawsuits. In this case, it's going to protect you significantly. He leaned back, tapping his pen on the desk. Here's my analysis. Your son-in-law is trying to lay the groundwork to claim you are incompetent or need supervision. The smear campaign, the stories about dangerous behavior. Those are preliminary steps for a possible conservatorship petition. A conservatorship, Take away my legal rights. It's a tactic. It doesn't always work. But it can tie up your assets in court for months while they argue you can't manage your own affairs. The solution is to prove conclusively that you are managing your affairs competently, which is exactly what we're doing now. The next step is to establish a revocable trust with an independent trustee. I'll be blunt. It will cost about $2,400 in legal fees, but it essentially makes you untouchable. The property belongs to the trust, not you personally. Family pressure loses all legal standing. Do it. How soon can we have it ready? 2 weeks. I'll draft the documents. You review and sign. Then we file them properly. From that point on, your estate is protected. The meeting lasted an hour and a half. When I left, the sun was lower, but I felt clearer than I had in weeks. On Thornton's advice, instead of driving home, I drove to the public library. I chose a computer in the corner, back to the wall, a habit, and accessed the Colorado property records. Public databases I knew from my engineering days. Building permits, liens, easements. I typed in Sarah and Cornelius's address and pulled the mortgage history. The home equity line of credit hit me like a bucket of cold water. $35,000. Dated 8 months ago. Single signature authorization. Cornelius's name only. I printed the documents. My hands wanted to shake, but they didn't. I added them to my folder and drove back to the cabin in silence. That night, I called Thornton from the porch. David, I found something. My daughter's house has a $35,000 line of credit on it that she didn't know about. Her husband took it out? Yes, 8 months ago. Colorado property records. The law there allows a single spouse HELOC under certain conditions, but hiding it from your partner is something else entirely. Has she found out? No. I don't know if I should tell her, or when. That's not a legal question, Ray. That's a family one, though legally. It explains his motive. He's clearly trying to use your cabin scheme to cover his own pre-existing debts. When I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and spread everything out. Lawyer's notes on the left, family communications in the center, financial findings on the right. Leonard's $47,000 gambling debt led to Cornelius taking out the $35,000 line of credit to cover part of it, which created the financial pressure, which led to the plan to take my cabin and liquidate it for cash. It all connected. I took out a legal pad and started drawing lines between related facts, circling key points, writing questions. Can Thornton investigate the legality of the HELOC? Does Sarah have legal recourse? When to inform her? How to protect her without pushing her further away? My phone buzzed. A text from Thornton. Trust documents will be ready for review on Monday. I replied, I'll be there. And I wrote one last note at the bottom of the page. Cornelius is cornered. And when an animal is cornered, it attacks. Prepare for escalation. 3 weeks later, on a Monday in early June, I drove to Thornton's office to sign the trust. In the briefcase beside me, I had 3 weeks of consolidated financial records. Bank statements, retirement funds, property appraisals, investment documents, all organized, labeled, and ready. Thornton's assistant had the papers ready on the conference table. It was 43 pages in total, every signature line marked with a yellow tab. I reviewed page by page while Thornton answered emails at his desk, giving me time. The revocable trust named him as the independent trustee. Total assets, $290,000. The cabin, my retirement savings, everything I had built in 40 years. The key clause was on page 17. Sarah only inherits if she divorces Cornelius, or if Cornelius signs a legal waiver of any claim to the property. This provision, Thornton said, sitting beside me, the conditional inheritance for Sarah. Understand, this may cause family conflict. I told him the conflict already existed. This just protected her from being exploited using my assets. Thornton warned that if Cornelius discovered the trust structure, he would react violently. Let him, I replied. This is all legal. He has no grounds to challenge it. Thornton looked at me with a small understanding. He knew legality and family drama were different things. Are you ready for him to escalate? He asked. I've been preparing for this since March, I answered. That's why we're here. He gave a slight smile. All right, let's sign. I put my signature on every page with a steady hand. The notary, Thornton's assistant, worked quickly and precisely, applying her seal with a satisfying heavy thud. Structural soundness, legal reinforcement. I wrote a check for $2,400 and took my copies in a sealed envelope. The rest of that week, I moved through my financial institutions methodically. Every call followed the same script. Identify myself, request change of beneficiary forms, explain the trust structure, confirm the documentation. Mr. Nelson, we have your request to change your beneficiary, said my retirement account administrator. Are you removing your daughter as beneficiary? No, I replied. I am designating my revocable trust as the primary beneficiary. My daughter will inherit through the trust. She asked, May I ask why you are making this change? I replied, Asset protection and estate planning. I have concerns about third-party claims. Understood, she concluded. We will process this within 5 business days. I'll need you to mail in the hard copy. It's already on its way. I also want you to send me an email confirmation, please. Of course. Anything else? Yes. Make a note in my file that this change was made voluntarily and with legal counsel. I am establishing a record of my competency in all financial decisions. There was a pause. That's not standard. But I will include that note. By Friday, all my assets were sheltered inside the trust structure. I had a checklist on my kitchen table, and I satisfyingly ticked off every completed item. 2 weeks later, Sarah called. Dad, Cornelius has been acting really weird lately. Her voice was tired, thin, asking about your finances. If you'd updated your will. I set my coffee mug down carefully. I've made some succession arrangements. It's the right thing to do at my age. I know. But he got furious when I mentioned you set up a trust. He said it was a betrayal. Why would my estate planning be a betrayal to him? It's not his inheritance. I gripped the phone tightly. Sarah, did you tell him the details of the trust? I just said you set one up. I didn't think it was a secret. It's not. It's just private. What exactly did Cornelius say? He said you're cutting the family out, that lawyers are manipulating you. Dad, what is going on? Why does he care so much? That's a very good question, honey. One you should be asking him directly. After hanging up, I immediately called Thornton. Cornelius knows about the trust. His reaction was instant. How soon can you get a medical evaluation? The next day, I was fixing the porch railing when Cornelius's car sped up the driveway, kicking up dust and gravel. He slammed on the brakes, got out without closing the door properly, and stormed toward me. I calmly set down my tools, picked up my cell phone, and started recording video. I stood at the top of the porch steps. 6 steps up, giving me the high ground. Cornelius had to walk uphill, looking up at me. I held the phone at chest level, camera clearly pointed at him. Cornelius, you are on my property uninvited. I am recording this conversation. I don't care about your recording. His face was red, his gestures aggressive. You set up a legal scheme to steal from your own daughter. The trust protects my assets and ensures Sarah inherits as she deserves. It's completely legal. As she deserves? What does that mean? Unless she divorces me. That's what you really want, isn't it? The trust ensures my assets cannot be claimed by third parties. It's standard estate planning. Third parties? I'm family. Your son-in-law. You are my daughter's husband. You have no legal right to what belongs to me. The trust only clarifies what is already a fact. His voice got louder. We'll see about that. I'm getting a lawyer. I'm going to challenge this. And I'll make sure you never see Sarah again. Are you threatening to keep my daughter from me just because I protected my assets? That's interesting. For the record, this isn't over. Then get off my property. Now. Or I'm calling the sheriff for trespassing. He stormed back to his car. The engine roared. Gravel flew as he reversed hard and shot back down the driveway. I stopped the recording. I reviewed the video immediately. Faces were visible. Audio was clear. Threats were registered. I uploaded it to the cloud and emailed a copy to Thornton. Subject: Evidence of hostile confrontation. That night, I wrote a detailed incident report. Date, time, exact words. No witnesses, unfortunately, but the video showed it all. Thornton's reply came in under an hour. Continue documenting everything. Consider a medical evaluation to preempt any attempt to question your capacity. Prepare for retaliation. They are running out of options. The next morning, I called Dr. Patricia Chen's clinic. The receptionist asked if there was a specific reason for the appointment. I'm 67, I own property, and I want documentation confirming I am healthy and of sound mind. Preventive planning. The appointment was scheduled for the following Monday. That night, I sat at my table and reviewed the confrontation video again, watching Cornelius's rage on the small screen. His mask had completely crumbled when the money was on the line. Every word recorded. Every threat registered. My phone buzzed. Email from Thornton. Good call on the medical certificate. They will likely try to involve Adult Protective Services. It's the standard playbook in these cases. Stay ahead of them, I wrote back. Already scheduled. Appointment is next week. Before closing the laptop, I looked at the framed photo of little Sarah on the shelf. 8 years old, missing her front teeth, laughing at something I'd said. I wondered how much collateral damage this fight would cause before it was over. Monday morning, I arrived at Dr. Chen's clinic 15 minutes early. The medical building was modern, single-story, and very functional. I filled out the forms, requesting copies of all test results and evaluations. When Dr. Chen called me in, I explained it directly. I'm 67. I own assets. And I want basic medical documentation certifying my physical and mental competence. She was a sharp woman, maybe in her 50s, with the weathered experience of someone who had practiced rural medicine for decades. Her expression was understanding. I see. Unfortunately, I've run into situations like this before. Adult children sometimes question a parent's competence to gain control of their assets. That is exactly what I am preventing. Can you provide a detailed written evaluation? Absolutely. I'll run a full cognitive screening and provide a formal letter. For legal purposes, correct? Correct. I want documentation that can be presented in court, if necessary. Then let's be thorough. The evaluation lasted 90 minutes. Blood pressure, reflexes, blood work, then the cognitive tests, a mini mental state exam, a clock drawing test, memory exercises. She asked me to draw a clock showing 3:15. I drew it accurately. She asked me to remember 3 words, apple, table, penny, and repeat them in 5 minutes. I remembered all 3. She asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens. I did it correctly. At the end, Dr. Chen typed her notes into the computer and then printed a letter on the clinic's letterhead. Mr. Ray Nelson is mentally competent, physically healthy, and fully capable of managing his own affairs and making independent decisions regarding his property and finances. Patient is alert, oriented, and cognitively intact. No signs of dementia, confusion, or diminished capacity. She signed it, stamped it with the clinic's seal, and handed me both the letter and copies of all my test results. That's $240 for the extended evaluation. I paid with a credit card, carefully noting the transaction for my records. 2 days later, I was in my workshop shed organizing tools when an unfamiliar sedan pulled up. A professional-looking woman in her 40s got out, carrying a tablet and an official-looking binder. Mr. Nelson? I'm Margaret Willows from Adult Protective Services. I'm here regarding a report filed about your welfare. Anger flashed immediately, but I kept my expression neutral. A report? From whom? I can't disclose that during my initial assessment. May I come in? Of course. Would you like some coffee? No, thank you. This is a routine welfare check. I held the door open for her. Transparency. I need to tell you up front. I am in a legal property dispute with family members. I suspect this report is part of that dispute, not a genuine concern for my welfare. I appreciate your honesty. I'll conduct my assessment objectively. If the complaint is unfounded, I'll note that in the record. Margaret walked through the cabin with her tablet, noting everything. The kitchen was clean and orderly. Bills were paid and filed. The refrigerator was stocked with fresh food. The bathroom was clean. The bedroom was tidy. No safety hazards. No signs of neglect or confusion. Do you have any difficulty with your daily activities? Cooking, cleaning, paying bills? None. I've lived alone for years since I retired. I manage everything myself. The report mentioned concerns about your mental state. Have you had any memory problems, confusion, or difficulty making decisions? I went to my desk and pulled out a folder. I had a complete medical exam just 2 days ago, specifically to address this issue. She read Dr. Chen's report carefully. This is very thorough and recent. Most people in your situation don't have updated medical documentation. I anticipated false accusations and wanted to have evidence ready. That demonstrates a very strategic way of thinking, Mr. Nelson. 40 years as an engineer taught me to plan ahead. I also showed her recent bank statements proving responsible financial management and copies of my trust documents, showing a well-structured estate plan. Margaret took a lot of notes. Her professional manner remained neutral, but I recognized the pattern in her questions. She had seen this before. Family exploitation disguised as concern. 3 days later, Thornton legally obtained copies of the official APS complaint. I read it at my kitchen table, slowly, several times. Cornelius and Leonard had signed as co-complainants. The accusations were detailed and completely false. They claimed Ray threatened family members with weapons. False. I've never owned a firearm. They claimed I showed paranoid behavior with security cameras everywhere. The cameras were for legitimate protection after actual threats. They claimed I refused medical care. False. I had just completed a comprehensive evaluation. They claimed I struggled with basic tasks and made irrational financial decisions. The trust was sophisticated planning, not an irrational act. Grace submitted a supporting statement, claiming I had endangered them with wild animals. The wolf incident back in March, now twisted as proof of incompetence. The report requested a mandatory psychiatric evaluation and possible guardianship proceedings. I felt my jaw tighten as I read. My knuckles went white on the pages. They weren't just attacking my property anymore. They were attacking my autonomy, my mind, my freedom. This was war. 10 days after Margaret's visit, the official notice arrived. The Adult Protective Services case was closed. The report was determined to be unfounded. Margaret's report clearly stated, subject is competent, living independently and safely. No evidence of exploitation, neglect, or diminished capacity. A recent medical evaluation confirms good physical and cognitive health. The report appears to be motivated by a family property dispute rather than a genuine concern for welfare. No further action required. I created a new folder labeled Evidence, False APS Report, and filed everything systematically. The original complaint with its false claims, Margaret's assessment report, the case closure letter, my medical evaluation, photographs of my well-maintained cabin, my written rebuttal to every false claim, with supporting evidence. The folder joined the growing collection on my shelf. I was building a complete case file. My phone rang. Thornton. Ray, I found something. Leonard and Grace have been using your cabin address for something. Public records show mail being sent there in their names. Could be mail fraud or identity theft. We need to investigate immediately. I looked out the window toward the mailbox at the end of the road. It hadn't occurred to me to check for mail addressed to people who didn't live here. I'm heading there now. I grabbed the truck keys, wondering what else I was about to uncover. I grabbed the keys and drove the long path down to the mailbox. A quarter-mile of dirt road, dust kicking up behind the truck in the afternoon heat. August in Wyoming made the air shimmer above the ground. The mailbox was a standard aluminum one on a weathered post, surrounded by tall grass. I put on gloves before opening it. I didn't want my fingerprints on mail that wasn't mine. 3 envelopes, all addressed to Leonard Harrison, or Grace Harrison, at my cabin's address. Wyoming Department of Family Services, First Mountain Credit Union, Social Security Administration. I photographed each envelope carefully with my phone. Front, back, postmarks visible, dates clear. Then I placed them in a plastic evidence bag I'd brought specifically for this purpose and drove back to the cabin. Thornton answered on the first ring. Ray, I found something serious. Leonard and Grace have been using your address for official correspondence. What for? Possible benefits fraud. They're getting letters from Wyoming Social Services, and they opened a bank account using your cabin address. But your camera footage proves they never lived there. That's a federal crime, isn't it? Mail fraud, benefits fraud, and maybe even identity theft. If they claim they had your permission, they could be facing years in federal prison if prosecuted. I looked at the evidence bag on my kitchen table. Then we make the report. I'm not covering for criminals just because they're related to my son-in-law. Understood. I'll prepare the evidence packet and contact the U.S. Attorney's Office. Ray, this changes everything. Once federal charges are filed, their credibility is destroyed. Good. Maybe they'll finally face consequences for their actions. The next week was a blur. I gathered the evidence with the same precision I'd used on engineering projects for 40 years. Camera footage showing Leonard and Grace's single brief visit in May. Utility bills proving no other occupants. The mail records. My sworn affidavit that I never authorized the use of my address. Thornton sent it all to Assistant U.S. Attorney James Morrison in the Economic Crimes Division. Morrison called me 3 days later. Mr. Nelson, Attorney Thornton delivered compelling evidence of benefits fraud using your address. I never authorized them to use my home. I have video showing they don't live here. I've reviewed it. It's clear they came once, briefly, and never returned. How long has mail been arriving in their names? Based on the postmarks, at least 6 weeks. That establishes a pattern. Combined with the benefits applications where they declared Wyoming residency, we have enough for a federal investigation. I'll be blunt. This will likely result in criminal charges. I'm not trying to ruin their lives, but I won't let them use my property for fraud. You're doing the right thing by reporting it. We'll take it from here. While Thornton was investigating Leonard and Grace's fraud, he discovered something else in the Colorado public records. Cornelius and Sarah's house had 3 missed mortgage payments, a delinquency of $8,400. The notice of default had already been filed, the first step toward foreclosure. Ray, this explains his desperation, Thornton told me on the call. He was counting on your cabin to solve his financial crisis. When your trust blocked that plan, he was left with no options. I sat at my kitchen table processing it. His own house is at risk. There is an unconventional option I need to mention. You could buy the delinquent debt. Banks often sell non-performing loans at a discount to collection firms. You would become the creditor, anonymously through an LLC. Cornelius would never know. I slowly understood the implications. That would give me total control. It would. It's also an ethical dilemma. You'd be holding the power to decide if your daughter keeps her home. I need you to think about it carefully. That afternoon I walked my land, circling the cabin, following the tree line, turning the idea over and over. If I bought the debt, I'd hold Cornelius's future in my hands. It was a power I had never wanted. But if the bank foreclosed, Sarah would lose her home. And she was blameless in all of this. The next morning I called Thornton. Do it, buy the debt. But Sarah is not to know. Not yet. Not until I can explain everything. The transaction took a week. I transferred $31,000 from my savings to an intermediary firm. They acquired the debt and set up Mountain Holdings, LLC, with my name as the beneficial owner. Cornelius received a notice that his loan had been sold, but no details on who the new creditor was. I filed the transfer receipt in a folder labeled, simply, Leverage. By mid-August, my position had changed completely. Leonard and Grace were under federal investigation. Cornelius's mortgage was under my secret control. Every attempt at manipulation was documented. My assets and property were legally untouchable. But I didn't feel triumph, just exhaustion. This was supposed to be a peaceful retirement. It had turned into a war, where my adversaries forced my hand at every turn. I sat on the porch at sunset, the stacks of evidence folders beside me, and made a decision. Sarah deserved the truth, all of it. She needed to understand what her husband had done, the risk her house was in, and what her father had been protecting her from. I took out my phone and typed, "Honey, we need to talk. Can you come to the cabin this weekend?" "Just you. It's important." Her reply came 10 minutes later. "Is everything okay? You're worrying me." "I'm fine," I typed back. "But there are things you need to know about your financial situation. Things Cornelius hasn't told you." "What things?" Dad, you're scaring me. Not over text. In person. Saturday afternoon. I'll make lunch. Cornelius has a work trip this weekend. I can come Saturday. Perfect. Just you. This conversation is between us. Okay, I'll be there around noon. I set the phone down and watched the mountains darken against the sunset. The next day, I would prepare. On Saturday, I would tell my daughter just how badly her husband had betrayed her. The truth wouldn't be simple. She might not believe me at first. She might even be angry. But I had kept these secrets long enough. Saturday dawned with a clear sky. I woke up early, with a nervousness I hadn't felt during this entire conflict. Facing Cornelius was strategy. Facing my daughter, that required a tougher kind of honesty. The kind that would hurt her. I cleaned the cabin. It was already tidy, but I needed to keep busy. I made chicken salad for sandwiches. Her favorite as a kid. I placed the folder of evidence on the kitchen table, right where she would sit. Around 11:30, I saw her sedan pull up, kicking up dust on the road. She got out of the car looking tired, worried. I met her on the porch with a hug. She felt tense. We started with coffee and small talk, her teaching job, the weather, anything but the real reason. But the folder on the table kept drawing her eye. Finally she asked, "Dad, what's wrong? Your text scared me." I took a deep breath. "Honey, there are things about your financial situation that Cornelius hasn't told you. Serious things." She gave a nervous laugh. "What? He missed a credit card payment? He gets distracted." "Your house is in foreclosure," I replied. 3 months of missed mortgage payments. The bank was about to take it. The color drained from her face. "That can't be right. We pay the mortgage. Cornelius handles it online every month." "That's what he told you. But this is what actually happened." I slid the notice of default across the table. She read it slowly, her hands shaking. It says, "The loan was sold to Mountain Holdings, LLC. "Who is that?" "That's me." "Well, a company in my name, managed by my lawyer. I bought your debt from the bank." "You bought our mortgage?" Disbelief flooded her face. "Why would you do that? How could you? What does this mean?" "It means, instead of the bank taking your house, I now control the debt. You and Cornelius owe me." "Not the bank." She stood up abruptly, emotions rising. "This is insane! Why didn't he tell me the mortgage was late? Would you have believed me? Or would you have let Cornelius explain it away?" "I needed leverage to protect you from what's coming." I let those words sink in. Then I continued. "There's more. 8 months ago, Cornelius took out a $35,000 home equity line of credit on your house." "That's not true. We both would have to sign for something like that." I slid the HELOC papers to her. "In Colorado, under certain conditions, one spouse can. Here's his signature. Where's yours?" She stared at the documents, her hands trembling. "I never signed this. I've never even seen these papers." $35,000? Where did that money go? My best guess? To cover some of Leonard's gambling debts. Remember you told me he lost $47,000 playing online poker? Cornelius tried to fix his father's problem by putting our house up as collateral, without telling me. And when that wasn't enough, when my cabin plan failed and he couldn't get any more money, he just stopped paying your mortgage. I suggested we eat. She refused at first. "How can you think about food right now?" But I insisted calmly. We needed a break before the next part. The sandwiches tasted like dust, but we ate them. After, I showed her the rest. In order. Dated. The recording of Cornelius's threatening confrontation on my porch. The false APS report he filed to have me declared incompetent. The federal mail fraud Leonard and Grace committed using my address. Each piece of evidence was presented with context and a timeline. She listened. At first she was defensive. Cornelius wouldn't do that. Then, doubtful. "Are you sure these documents are real?" Finally, she was shattered. When I showed her the APS complaint, where her husband tried to have her own father's legal rights taken away, she broke. It wasn't soft crying. It was deep, heavy sobs that shook her shoulders. I let her cry. I didn't offer empty comfort. I just sat there. When she could finally speak, it was through tears. How long? How long have you known? Pieces of it since May. All of it since July. She looked at me hurt and angry. Months. You knew for months that my marriage was a lie. That I was in financial danger. And you didn't tell me. I met her eyes. If I had told you in May, with no proof, would you have believed me? Or would Cornelius have convinced you I was paranoid and bitter, just like he was already telling everyone? Her voice went quiet, softer, accepting my point. I don't know. Probably not. That's why I waited. That's why I gathered proof. So you would know it was real, not just your father's opinion. I refilled her coffee cup, pushed the sugar bowl toward her. When she was nervous, she always took it too sweet. A childhood habit. Finally, I had to put the choice on the table. You have to make a decision. And it has to be soon. What decision? Whether you stay with Cornelius or you leave him. I'm not making that choice for you. How can I decide that right now? You have until the end of August. About a week, because in 2 weeks, the feds are going to arrest Leonard and Grace for fraud. When that happens, this all becomes public. Cornelius will be questioned. Your marriage will be news in a town this small. She was overwhelmed. This is too much. I can't think. If you leave him, file for divorce. Protect yourself legally. I will forgive the mortgage debt on your house. It will be yours, free and clear. I will help you start over. You're bribing me to leave my husband. I'm offering you a lifeboat. Whether you take it is your choice. But understand, if you stay with him, I can't protect you from what's coming. Hours later, she gathered her things, exhausted. I walked her to her car, carrying a folder with copies of the documents. Before she got in, she turned. Did you ever think about what this would do to me? Knowing all this? Every day since I found out. That's why I built such a solid case. So you'd know I wasn't exaggerating. I don't know if I can forgive you for waiting so long. I understand. But I would rather you hate me for waiting than be destroyed because I didn't wait long enough to protect you. I need time to think. You have 1 week. After that, this moves forward, with or without you. She looked at me with tired eyes. I don't know who to trust anymore. Trust the documents. They don't lie. People do. She left without looking back. I stood in the driveway, watching until her car disappeared, wondering if I had just lost my daughter or saved her. 5 days later, a Wednesday morning, I was on the porch drinking coffee when my phone rang. Thornton, it's happening now. The feds are executing the arrest warrants for Leonard and Grace in Colorado. I thought you should know. I set my coffee down carefully. No celebration, just acknowledgement. Thank you for letting me know. An hour passed. Then my phone rang again. It was Sarah. Her voice was shaking. Dad, Cornelius just got a call. His parents, they were arrested by federal agents. Something about fraud. Were you involved in that? I took a deep breath. I reported their crimes to the proper authorities. What happened after that was just the justice system doing its job. There was a long silence. Then, quietly, I need to call you back. The line cut. I sat back down, looking at the mountains, wondering if my daughter would ever forgive me for starting this chain of events. In less than 3 hours, Cornelius called, screaming, "You did this! You turned them in! You destroyed my family!" I stayed silent. I let him burn himself out. Your parents committed federal crimes using my property. I reported it. That's what law-abiding citizens do. I'll tell everyone. I'll make sure they know you orchestrated this. That you're vengeful and cruel. Go ahead. I have documentation of every crime they committed. My lawyer will be happy to share it publicly. Thornton had driven to my cabin specifically for this moment. I handed him the phone. Mr. Harrison, this is David Thornton, counsel for Ray Nelson. His voice was professional, measured, and final. Your parents committed federal felonies. My client fulfilled his civic duty by reporting those crimes to the authorities. Any attempt to slander him will result in immediate legal action. Do you understand? Click. Cornelius had hung up. On Friday afternoon, Cornelius tried to sell the house he shared with Sarah. He was desperate for cash, for his parents' legal defense. and for his own survival. But the title search revealed the problem. The mortgage was in default, and it was owned by Mountain Holdings, LLC. His real estate agent explained he couldn't sell without the mortgage holder's approval. Cornelius called Thornton, frantic. "Your firm owns my mortgage? How is that possible? My client acquired your non-performing loan through legal channels. You were notified weeks ago that your loan was sold. I need to sell this house. My parents need lawyers. Please." Thornton's reply was calm. "My client is willing to negotiate terms. You will receive a formal offer within 24 hours. Saturday morning, a certified letter was delivered. Inside, my formal offer, through Thornton's office. The terms: I would forgive the entire remaining mortgage debt, the $35,000 outstanding balance, plus the $8,400 in arrears. A total forgiveness of $43,400. The conditions: Cornelius must sign the divorce papers, making no claim on any assets. He must sign a legal waiver, relinquishing any and all rights to my property, inheritance, or assets. And he must sign a sworn affidavit acknowledging he had no legal right to use my cabin or involve me in his financial problems. The deadline: 72 hours. If he refused, I would immediately foreclose. He would lose the house anyway and get nothing. Cornelius called Sarah. He tried to convince her to fight this with him. Her answer, I learned later, was simple. I already filed for divorce yesterday. Sign the papers, Cornelius. It's over. Monday morning, Cornelius showed up at Thornton's office. Thornton described him later as disheveled, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes, his hands shaking. He signed every document: the divorce agreement, the property waiver, the sworn affidavit. When he was done, he asked quietly, "Do I at least get to keep the house?" Thornton's reply was blunt. "Once the divorce is final, the house will be transferred to Sarah, free and clear. You will need to find somewhere else to live." Cornelius left without another word. That same afternoon, my phone rang. Sarah. Her voice was different. Still hurt, still processing, but stronger. "Dad, I signed the divorce papers. I'm leaving him. I can't stay in that house. Too many memories. Can you help me find something near you? I want to start over." A profound relief washed over me. Not triumph, just relief. "Of course, honey. We'll find something perfect, close enough to visit, far enough for your independence." Are you disappointed in me for not realizing what he was sooner? Never. You trusted someone you loved. That's what good people do. He betrayed that trust. That is on him, not you. Her voice broke just a little. "Thank you. I needed to hear that. You're my daughter. I'm proud of you for making the hard choice." That takes real strength. After we hung up, I went out to the porch and sat in the rocking chair I'd bought for my retirement. For the first time in months, I sat quietly. Not planning, not strategizing, not worrying. The afternoon was clear. The elk were grazing in the clearing. The mountains stood eternal in the distance. I rocked slowly, a steady rhythm, and I let myself feel the weight lighten on my shoulders, though it wasn't gone completely. Sarah still had healing to do. The divorce had to be finalized. Leonard and Grace still had to be sentenced, but it felt lighter. The immediate danger was gone. My daughter was safe. My property was protected. Almost over. There was just one more chapter to write. The one where we found out what peace really looked like. 2 weeks later, I was in a federal courtroom in Cheyenne, Wyoming, attending the sentencing hearing for Leonard and Grace. I wasn't required to be there. The prosecutor didn't need me. But I needed to see this through to the end. Leonard and Grace stood before the judge, looking small in their federal court attire. Their lawyer had negotiated a plea deal. Guilty pleas to reduce charges in exchange for lighter sentences. The judge reviewed their criminal history. None. And their ages. Then the evidence of their guilt, which was overwhelming. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, you have pleaded guilty to benefits fraud. The court accepts your plea agreement." The judge's voice was firm. "I want to be clear about the severity of your actions. You exploited systems designed to help citizens in genuine need." "Yes, Your Honor," Leonard said quietly. 2 years of supervised probation, $45,000 in restitution and fines, a permanent ban from all federal and state benefit programs in Wyoming. You will report monthly. Any violation will result in immediate incarceration. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, they said together. You are fortunate to avoid prison. Do not waste this opportunity. Court is adjourned. As I left the courthouse, Leonard caught my eye from across the lobby. A brief moment of mutual acknowledgement. He looked away first, defeated. I felt no triumph, just closure. Sarah told me later that Cornelius moved into a small studio apartment in a cheaper part of Denver. He took only what would fit in his car. I saw him one last time when he came to get his things, she said. He looked different. Not angry. Just empty. He signed the final divorce papers without a word and drove away. The divorce was finalized in mid-September. Sarah legally changed her name back to Sarah Nelson. With my help, she found a small 1200 square foot house in Cody, about 15 minutes from my cabin. It was modest but charming, an older build. It needed some updates, but it had good bones and a view of the Absaroka Mountains. I gave her the down payment as a gift. Sarah secured a mortgage for the rest, using her teacher's salary and her excellent credit. She also got a third-grade teaching position at the elementary school in Cody, starting immediately. I helped her move. We spent a weekend painting rooms and assembling furniture. Simple work, but deeply meaningful. Rebuilding our relationship through practical acts of service. The healing wasn't linear for Sarah. Some days, she was optimistic about her new start. Other days, she felt anger. At Cornelius, at herself, and even at me, for not telling her sooner. I listened without defending myself, understanding she needed to process a complex grief. We settled into a routine, Sunday dinners together, alternating between her house and mine. During one dinner, as we chopped vegetables together in her new kitchen, she asked, "Do you think I'll ever trust anyone again? Or, want to get married again?" I put down my knife. Honestly, I don't know, but that's okay. Trust isn't something you just give away. It's earned, slowly, through consistent actions over time. Anyone worthwhile in your life will understand that. She smiled, a small, genuine smile. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just old enough to have made my own mistakes and learned from them. On a cool evening in late September, Sarah drove up to my cabin for dinner. We cooked together. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad, and ate on the porch, despite the chilly air. As the sun set, painting the mountains orange and gold, a small herd of elk emerged from the trees to graze in my clearing. We sat in matching rocking chairs. I'd bought a second one after she moved nearby, and watched in comfortable silence. Then Sarah said quietly, "Thank you, Dad, for everything, for fighting for me even when I didn't understand it, for being patient while I figured things out." Emotion tightened my throat. "You don't have to thank me. You're my daughter. I will always fight for you, I know, but I want to. You could have walked away, protected just yourself. You didn't. That was never an option. Family means protecting each other, even when it's hard. I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner. Don't apologize for being loyal to your marriage. That says good things about you." She smiled. A real smile. "For the first time in months. Look at that big bull elk. He's magnificent. That's my favorite one. I see him most evenings." I smiled back. "Welcome to the neighborhood, honey. You'll get to know all the regular visitors. I love it here already. This feels like home. It is home for both of us now." Later, after Sarah left, I stayed on the porch, rocking slowly, watching the last light fade from the sky. I remembered March, buying this cabin, full of hope for a quiet retirement, and how that peace was threatened by Cornelius's ultimatum. The journey from March to September felt like years, but I had navigated it without losing myself, without becoming cruel, without abandoning my values. I protected what mattered, using law and strategy, instead of vengeance and anger. My daughter was safe, building a new life nearby. My property was secure. My autonomy was intact. The antagonists faced appropriate consequences, but were not destroyed beyond recovery. They could rebuild if they chose better paths. As the stars came out over the mountains, I allowed myself a small smile. This was what I wanted all along. Quiet nights, wildlife, mountain air, and now, my daughter, close enough to share it with. Not the retirement I had planned, but a better one, because it was earned with integrity, not just luck. I stood up, stretched my back. I wasn't young, after all, and went inside to call Sarah, just to say goodnight, just because I could, just because she was there, and we were okay. The cabin door closed softly. The mountains kept their silence. Witnesses, peace, hard-won and deeply appreciated, settled over the property like the September night. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to William's Revenge Stories, and share your thoughts on this story in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thanks for watching.